the Jara says that it occurs to him that the Barrel analysis is too atomizing. Players, I don't know what he meant, can combine different types and make some of the analysis invalid. Which I've thought about that a bit, and I do agree with
Well,
Dejar to some degree.
well, I
Oh,
mean, like, so
organizations, gotcha.
there was there was a Bartle test online, and it would basically kind of rank you in different things. Like, and like nobody's a pure socializer, nobody's a pure achiever,
Right.
nobody's a pure, any of the types. Like you kind of have different strengths. So, like, when I took the test, I was a socializer, explorer, killer. Like I scored very high in socializer and explorer. I scored moderate on killer. I scored almost nothing in achiever. Um, which is kind of like why I tend to kind of play very kind of select MMOs, and most of the time I play with friends.
Yeah.
If I'm playing with friends, then it's like you know, uh, I like socialization because I like hanging out with friends. I like exploring. I like especially as a game designer, I like looking at other interesting mechanics and kind of tearing it apart and see how it works. I like a little bit of the competition, but I don't like grinding. I don't like EPing contests to show, hey, look, I can do this thing faster, better. I can level up a character faster. I can go do the hardest raid. When it's first out type thing. Like I just have zero motivation for that. And like even Bartle talks about this. And he talked a little bit about like these are motivations and like nobody is a single focus. And so but the thing is, I was like if you're a if you're a socializer, explorer, killer, and somebody makes an explorer game, it doesn't matter. Like it's going to appeal to me because I have the explorer motivation. If most games are achiever focused, but they tend to have some element of socialization just because they have chat. And so like a socializer can often fit into an achiever based game even if they don't have high achiever motivation. And so that's why I kind of like I usually try to kind of I'm not always perfect with this, but I usually try to talk about players having a certain type of motivation rather than being an achiever, a killer, an explorer.
Right. Yeah, like I've taken the test a couple of times and I've gotten different results each time that I've taken it because I'll answer the questions with a different level of well, not level of honesty, but a different scope of honesty. You know,
Well, I mean,
because it's mood.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, also Bartle in his book, Designing Virtual Worlds, talked about how people kind of progress through time over time.
Right.
And like like I forget the exact flow, but they tend to start as achiever because gaining points and showing off is easy. They tend to, and then they kind of tend to go explore more because they want to kind of understand how to achieve better. Some people go off and do some killer stuff, but at the end, basically you kind of get bored with the game, and so then what you do is you
Socialize.
socialize. Yeah, exactly. You hang out with friends.
Yeah,
Uh,
I when I did the test, I tend to rank socializer, explorer, achiever.
mm,
I don't tend to have a killer mindset unless I play a very specific game. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Oh,
mm.
Minecraft. I am a fucking killer when I play Minecraft. Um, hey, you've experienced it. But what? But I tend to like socializing and just kind of learning the game, like the ins and outs of the games, and then I'll try to use that to achieve things. Basically, that's my
Right,
analysis of myself.
right. Yeah, I think that's some people some people I mean pretty much like most modern MMOs appeal to achiever motivation, like I said, but how people kind of approach that differs. Like some people are more pure achievers, so they might get their information from friends or from websites. Um, some people might have other motivations kind of mixed in there. The Jajara said like in his Eve Corp. have a bunch of different types of players. The killers protect the builders make them, make ships for the killers, etc. And I think, I think like that's again like in Barlow's original paper, he talked about like kind of the interplay between the different groups. And I think like like one of the big things like in Eve is like like, especially in a corp, that tends to kind of appeal to some of the more social players as well. And keep in mind like the killer type is more than just like I want to beat you up in combat, even though that tends to be kind of the most common expression. A lot sometimes like the killer wants control, and whether that's social control, whether that's gameplay control, whatever, they want to enforce them. They want to enforce mastery over other people. And so like a leader of an Eve Corp is still if they're not in the ship going and blowing people up, even if they're kind of because they basically they're kind of directing people. They have mastery over other people by virtue of being a leader. And so this is why like you can't just say killers are just the terrible type of person universally, and we need to get rid of them.
Even though they are terrible people. No, I'm kidding.
By and large, yes, but there are glorious exceptions sometimes.
But the other thing I was thinking was just kind of like how sometimes PVE games that don't have direct PvP can very much turn into a PvP experience. I point my attention to Astroneers.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to fuck with the guys you're playing with, break the tether they're attached to. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, yeah, and like you get a little bit of that with with any game, like in original in the Quest, like they had a very strict separation between PvP and PvE. Like you had to flag for PvE, and that was like kind of novel. A lot of other games, basically, people were kind of like flagged for PvP by default.
Right.
But what would happen is that you'd get essentially people doing kind of indirect PvP. The best example would be like people who could basically drag monsters.
Oh, and PKing.
Well, they wouldn't PK the person directly, but like one of the characters, a hilarious thing. If you want to see like kind of like the real asshole nature of some of the old school players, look up Fansy the Bard, Fansy, the Bard in EverQuest. He would basically bards had a ability where they could run fast.
Right.
They would basically move faster than other characters, and so they could basically kite things. So what they would do is like what this one character would do is he'd basically like grab a monster and run toward a group, hoping that they would hit the monster by mistake and basically would aggro on them. And whenever somebody would call him on that, he would basically just tell them, "Oh, I'm role playing." Right. And like he had this whole thing like where he basically like like legit just basically say, "No, I'm role playing. This is cool. It's fine."
Nice.
The other thing, another class that would do this a lot would be Monk, where they could they'd get a run speed buff from another class. They would basically drag a whole bunch of enemies toward a group, and then they would feign death. And if their feign death worked, basically the monster would stop, would ignore them. And the first things monster did was they look for other things to aggro nearby before they would return.
Right.
And so you could basically drag a whole bunch of monsters to a group, kill the group, and then you could take over their camp spot.
Yeah. In 11, we call that MPKing.
Right.
And what people would do, they'd grab mobs and they'd pull them to the zone lines where people were hanging out looking for groups.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, a lot of people would be AFK, so they come back dead.
Mm-hmm.
Shit. And that was actually specifically against terms of service.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'd get put into GM jail. I had a friend who got put in GM jail for like a week and a half because of that.
Oh my.
Of game time.
Right.
Like that's the one thing that you have to specify with these older penalties, that if you logged out, the timer stopped.
Right, right.
So like he'd have to spend a week and a half logged in 24/7
Mm-hmm.
before he could actually play the game again on that character. And on 11, you had to pay extra to have extra characters.
Right.
It was like a dollar and a half per additional character slot a month.
Mm.
So that was really penalizing.
Right.
And now you just get banned or suspended.
Right, right.
But yeah, that those kind of, and that that is why they started implementing a mob leashes, wasn't it? To keep people from doing that kind of stuff.
I mean, yeah. Part of it was that, yeah, and yeah, because a lot of times the people just kind of drag monsters to the zone, and this kind of goes back to kind of a lot of the balance too, like making it so that like monsters kind of were limited to a specific area type thing. But yeah,
Right.
but yeah, like a monster. I mean, I think also it's kind of a difficulty thing because like if you aggro a monster, in EverQuest, it would basically follow you to the zone line.
Right, same in 11. Unless you used
Right.
a deodorize, there was actually a spell to reduce aggro leash.
Mm.
So if you got aggroed by a mob, what you'd have to do is you'd have to bind it, sleep it, stun it, whatever, cast deodorize on yourself, and then run away.
Mm.
And then it would lose track of you after a while.
Right.
I played 11 for like years, like 10 years. I never knew
Mm.
what the hell deodorize did until I looked it up recently.
Oh my.
It was just because whenever you're going through a high level zone or a zone that you're not comfortable with, and you're a white mage or red mage, like you just automatically deodorize, sneak, and invis so that you don't
Right.
aggro anything. I never knew what deodorize did. I just knew that I needed it.
Right.
It's just so, because there's no descriptions in game. In the
Mm.
game, like none of the spells actually give you a specific description of what it does. So deodorize
Right.
just says removes your scent.
Right. Right.
Okay, does that mean there's
Right.
smell aggro in the game? Is that what I'm
Right.
supposed to? um.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah, and but that's like an explorer would know that. An explorer would figure
Right,
that
right.
out.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And that's what the explorers were good for, figuring out what spells did, what all the behaviors for the spells are. Because some of those spells have like secondary and tertiary effects that, the game doesn't tell you about.
Right. Right.
But
It's not necessarily immediately obvious,
right. But yeah, I hope everyone had fun.